Inherent Vice by Thomas Pynchon. Chapter 1. She came along the alley and up the back steps the way she always used to. Doc hadn't seen her for over a year. Nobody had. Back then it was always sandals, bottom half of a flower print bikini, faded Country Joe, and the fish t-shirt. Tonight she was all in flatland gear, hair a lot shorter than he remembered, looking just the way she swore she'd never look. "That you, Shasta?" "Thinks he's hallucinating." "Just a new package, I guess." They stood in the street light through the window kitchen. There'd never been much point on putting curtains over and listened to the thumping of the surf from down the hill. Some nights, when the wind was right, you could hear the surf all over town. "Need your help, Doc. You know I have an office now, just like a day job and everything." I looked in the phone book, almost went over there, but then I thought, better for everybody if this looks like a secret rendezvous. "Okay, nothing romantic tonight." "Bummer. But it might still be a paying gig." "Somebody's been keeping a close eye?" "Just spent an hour on the surface streets trying to make it look good." "How about a beer?" He went to the fridge, pulled 2 cans out of the case he kept inside, handed one to Shasta. "There's this guy," she was saying. "There would be, but why get emotional? If he had a nickel for every time he'd heard a client start off this way, he could be over in Hawaii now, loaded day and night, digging the waves at Waimea, or better yet, hiring somebody to dig them for him. Gentleman of the straight world, perhaps?" He beamed. "Okay, Doc. He's married." "Some money situation?" She shook back her hair that wasn't there and raised her eyebrows. "So what?" "Groovy with Doc." "And the wife? She knows about you?" Shasta nodded. "But she's seeing somebody too. It isn't just the usual. They're working together on some creepy little scheme." To make off with hubby's fortune?" "Yeah, I think I've heard that one's happening once in a while around LA. And you want me to do what?" "Exactly." He found the paper bag he'd brought his supper home in and got busy pretending to scribble notes on it. "Because straight chick, uniform, makeup supposed to look like no makeup or whatever." Here came that old, well-known hard-on Shasta. Was always good for sooner or later. "Does it ever end?" he wondered. Of course it does. It did. They went in the front room, and Doc laid down on the couch, and Shasta stayed on her feet and sort of drifted around the place. "Is They want me in on it," she said. "They think I'm the one who can reach him when he's vulnerable, or as much as he ever gets." "Bare ass and asleep." "I knew you'd understand." "You're still trying to figure out if it's right or wrong, Shasta?" "Worse than that." She drilled him with that gaze he remembered so well. When he remembered. "How much loyalty I owe him." "I hope you're not asking me. Beyond the usual boilerplate people owe anybody, they're fucking steady." "Thanks." Dear Abby said about the same thing. "Groovy. Emotions aside, then let's look at the money. How much of the rent he's been picking up?" "All of it." Just for a second he caught the old narrow, defiant grin. "Pretty hefty." "For Handock Park?" Doc whistled the title notes from Can't Buy Me Love, ignoring the look on her face. "You're giving him IOUs for everything, of course?" "You fucker. If I'd known you were still this bitter, me? Trying to be professional here, is all. How much were Wifey and the BF offering to cut you in for?" Shasta named the sum. Doc had outrun souped up Rollses full of indignant smack dealers on the Pasadena freeway, doing 100 in the fog and trying to street through all those crudely engineering curves. He'd He walked back. He walked up back alleys east of LA, River with nothing but a borrowed fro pick in his baggies for protection. Been in and out of the Hall of Justice while holding a small fortune in Vietnamese weed, and the days had nearly convinced himself all of that reckless era was over with. But now he was beginning to feel deeply nervous again. This, carefully now, this isn't just a couple of X rated Polaroids then. Dope planted in the glove compartment? Nothing like that? Back when she could go weeks without anything more complicated than a pout, now she was laying some hefty combination of face ingredients on him that he couldn't read at all. Maybe something she'd pick up at acting school. It isn't what you're thinking, Doc. Don't worry, thinking comes later. What else? I'm not sure, but it sounds like they want him to commit some loony bin? You mean legally? Or a snatch of some kind? Nobody's telling me, Doc. I'm just a bait. Come to think of it, there's never been this much sorrow in her voice either. I heard you're seeing somebody downtown? Seeing, well, oh, you mean Penny. Nice flatland chick. Out in the search of secret hippie love thrills, basically. Also, some kind of junior DA in Evel Younger's shop? Doc gave him some thought. You think somebody there can stop this before it happens? Not too many places I can go with this, Doc. Okay, I'll talk to Penny. See what we can see. You're a happy couple. They have names? Addresses? When he heard the older gent's names, he said, This is the same Mickey Wolfman who's always been in the paper? The real estate big shot? You can't tell anybody about this, Doc. Deaf and dumb. Part of the job. Any phone numbers you'd like to share? She shrugged, scowled, gave him one number. Try to never use it. Groovy. And how do I reach you? You don't. I moved out of the place. Staying where I can any staring staying where I can anymore. Don't ask. He almost said, There's room here, which in fact there wasn't. But he'd seen her looking around at everything that hadn't changed. The authentic English pub, dartboard up on the wagon wheel, and the Warhouse swag lamp with the purple psychedelic bulb with vibrating filament. The collecting model hot rods made entirely of coarse cans. The beach volleyball autographed by Wilt Chamberlain and Dayglow Feltmaker. The velvet painting and so forth, with an expression of, you would have to say, distaste. He walked her down the hill where she was parked. Weeknights out weren't too different from weekends. So this part of the town was already all a hoot with fun seekers, drinkers, and surfers screaming in the alleys. Dopers out of food errands, flatland guys in for a night of hustling stewardess, flatland ladies with all too grounded day jobs hoping to be mistaken for stewardess. Uphill and invisible, traffic out of the boulevard and to the freeway uttered tuneful exhaust phrases which went echoing out of sea, where the crews of oil tankers sliding along, hearing them, could have figured out wildlife taking care of nighttime business on an exotic coast. In the last pocket of darkness before the glare of beachfront drive, they came to a pause. A timeless pedestrian gesture. These parts usually announced a kiss or at least a grabbed ass. But she said, Don't come any further. Somebody might be watching by now. Call me or something. You never did let me down, Doc. Don't worry, I'll. No, I mean, really. Ever. Oh, sure I did. You were always true. It had been dark at the beach for hours. He hadn't been smoking much, and it wasn't headlights. But before she turned away, he could swear he saw a light falling on her face. The orange light just after sunset that catches the face turned to the west, watching to the ocean for someone to come in on the last wave of the day. into shore and safety. At least her car was the same, the Cadillac ragtop she had forever, a '59 Eldorado Biarritz, bought used once and lots over on Western where they had stand out close to the traffic so it swept away the smell or whatever they were smoking. After she drove away, Doc sat on the bench down at Esplanade, long slopeful and lighted windows ascending behind him, and watched the luminous blooms of surf and the lights of late commuter traffic zigzagging up the distant hillside of Palos Verdes. He ran through things he hadn't asked, like how much he'd come to depend on Wolfman's guarantee level of ease and power, and how ready was she to go back to the bikini and t-shirt lifestyle, and how free of regrets? At least, askable of all, how passionately did she really feel about old Mickey? Doc knew the likely reply. I love him. What else? With the unspoken footnote that the word these days was being way too overused. Anybody with any claims to hipness loved everybody, not to mention other useful applications like hustling people into sex activities they might not, given the choice, much care to engage in. Back at his place, Doc stood for a while gazing at the velvet painting from one of the Mexican families who set up their weekend pitches along the boulevards through the green flatland where people still rode horses between Gordita and the freeway. Out of the vans and into the calm early mornings would come sofa with crucifixions and Last Suppers, outlaw bikers on elaborately detailed Harleys, superhero badasses in special forces gear packing M16s, and so forth. This picture of Doc showed a Southern California beach that never was. Palms, bikini babes, surfboards, the works. He thought of his he thought of it as a window to look out of when he couldn't deal with looking out of the traditional glass type one in another room. Sometimes in the shadows the view would light up, usually when he was smoking weed, as if the contrast knob of cretation had been messed up with just enough to give everything an understanding underglow, a luminous edge, and promise that the night was about to turn epic somehow. Except for tonight, which only looked more like work, he got on the telephone and tried to call Penny, but she was out, probably what to seeing the night away opposite some short haired attorney with a promising career. Cool with Doc. Next, he rang up his Aunt Reet, who lived down the boulevard on the other side of the dunes in a more suburban part of town with houses, yards, and trees, because of which it had become known as the tree section. A few years ago, after divorcing a lapsed Missouri Synoid Lutheran with a T-bird agency and a fatality for a restless homemakers, one meets at bars and bowling alleys. Reed had moved down here for the San Joaquin with the kids and started selling real estate, and before long she had her own agency, which she now ran out on a bungalow on the same oversized lot as her house. Whenever Doc needed to know anything touching on the world of property, Aunt Reed, with her phenomenal lot by lot grasp of land used the desert to the sea, as they like to say on the evening news, was the one he went to. Someday, she promised, there will be a computers for this, and all you'll have to do is type in what you're looking for, or even better, just talk it like an AL 2001 A Space Odyssey. And it'll be right back at you with more information that you ever want to know. Any lot in LA Basin, all the way back to the Spanish land grants. Water rights, encumbrances, mortgage histories, whatever you want, trust me, it's coming. Till then, the real non sci fi world, there was Aunt Reed's bordering on the supernatural sense of the land. The stories that seldom appear in deeds or contracts, especially matrimonial. The generations of family hatreds, big and small, the way the water flowed, or used to. She picked on the sixth ring. The TV was set loud in the background. Make it quick, Doc. I gotta live one tonight and a quarter ton of makeup to put on yet. What can you tell me about Mickey Wolfman? She took even a second to breathe. Doc didn't notice. West Hyde Hochdove Mafia, biggest of the big, construction, saving and loans, untaxed billions, stashed under the Alps someplace, technically Jewish but wants to be a Nazi, becomes exercised often to the point of violence at those who forget to spell his name with two N's. What's he to you? Duck gave her a rundown on Shasta's visit and her account on the plot against Wolfman's fortune. In the real estate business, Reed remarked, God knows few of us are strangers to moral ambiguity, but some of these developers, they make Godzilla look like a conservationist. You might not care to get into this, Larry. Who's paying you? Well, all on spec, eh? Big surprise. Listen, if Shasta can't pay you, maybe that means Mickey's dumped her, and she's blaming the wife and wants revenge. Possible. But say I just wanted to hang out and rap with this Wolfman dude. Was that an exasperated sigh? I wouldn't recommend your usual approach. He goes around with a dozen bikers, mostly Aryan Brotherhood, alumni to watch his back. All court certified badasses, trying to make appointment for once. Wait a minute. I ditched social studies class a lot, but Jews and the AB, isn't there something about, I forget, hatred? The book on Mickey is, he's unpredictable. More and more lately. Some would say eccentric. I would say stoned out of his fucking mind. Nothing personal. And this goon squad, they're loyal to him? Even if they were in the place they took some oath with maybe anti-Semitic clause in there and there? Drive within 10 blocks of the man, they'll lie down in front of your car. Keep coming, they'll roll a grenade. You want to talk to Mickey? Don't be spontaneous. You don't even need to be cute. Go through the channels. Yeah, but I also don't want to get Shasta in trouble. Where do you think I could run into him? Like, accidentally? I promised my kid's sister I'd never put her baby in the way of danger. I'm cool with the Brotherhood, Aunt Reed. I know the handshake and everything. Alright, it's your ass, kid. I have major liquid liner issues to deal with here, but I'm told Mickey's been spending time out at his latest assault on the environment. Some chipboard horror known as Channel View Estates. Oh yeah, that. Bigfoot Bjornson does commercials for them, interrupting strange movies you've never heard of. Well, maybe your old cup buddy's one of the ones should be talking to care of this. Well, maybe your old cup buddy's the one you should be talking to take care of this. Have you been in touch with the LAPD? I think of going to Bigfoot, Doc said. But just as I went reaching for the phone, I remembered how, being Bigfoot and all, he'd probably try to pop me for something, or the whole thing. Maybe you're better off with the Nazis. I don't even know the choice. Be careful, Larry. Chicken now and then just so I can reassure Elmina that you're still alive. Fucking Bigfoot. Well, wouldn't you know? On some extrasensory impulse, Doc reached for the tube, switched it on, and flipped to one of the off-network channels dedicated to long-ago TV movies and unsold pilots. And sure enough, there was the old hippie-hating Mad Dog himself, moonlighting after a busy day of civil rights violations as pitchman for Channel View Estates. A Michael Wolfman concept, it read underneath the logo. Like many LA cops, Bigfoot, named for his entry method of choice, harbored show business yearnings and a fact that he already appeared in enough character parts. From comical Mexicans on The Flying Nun to assistant psychopaths on Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, to be paying SAG dues and receiving residual checks. Maybe the producer of channel view spots were desperate enough to be counting on some audience recognition. Maybe, as Doc suspected, Bigfoot was somehow duped into whatever the underlying real estate deal was. Whatever, personal dignity didn't come into it much. Bigfoot showed up on camera wearing get-ups that would have embarrassed the most unironical hippie in California. Tonight's being an ankle-length velvet cape in a plazy print of so many jaggling psychedelic hues that dogs tube. A low-end affair purchased in Sodi's parking lot at Moonlight Madness sale a couple years ago. Couldn't really keep up. Bigfoot had accessorized his outfit with love and beads, shade with peace symbols on the lenses, and a gigantic afro with striped Chinese red, chartreuse, and indigo. Bigfoot, Bigfoot often reminded viewers of legendary used car figure Carl Worthington, except where Cal was famous for including live animals in his pitch, Bigfoot scripts Bigfoot's crypts featured a relentless terror squad of small children who climbed all over the model home furniture, performed insubordinate cannonballs into backyard pools, whooped and hollered and pretended to shoot Bigfoot down, screaming, "Freak power!" and "Death to the pig!" Viewers were ecstatic. Those little kids, they would cry, "Wow, they're really something, huh?" No overfed leopard would ever get up Carl Worthington's nose the way these kids did Bigfoot's. But he was a pro, wasn't he? And by God, he would soldier through, closely studying old W.C. Fields and Beat Davies movies whenever they come on to see the tips he could pick up from sharing the frame with kids whose cuteness for him was never better than problematic. "We'll be chumps," he would croak as it to himself, pretending to puff compulsively on a cigarette. "We'll be chums." There was now a sudden hammering on the front door, and briefly Doc flashed that it had to be Bigfoot in person, about to kick his way in once again as in the days of old. But instead it was Dennis from down the hill, whose name everybody pronounced to rhyme with penis, appearing even more disoriented than usual. "So, Doc, I'm on Doncrease, the drugstore there, and I noticed their sign. Drug. Store? Okay. Walked past it 1,000 times, never really saw it. Drug store? Man, far out. I went in, and Smiling Steve was at the counter, and I said, "Yes, hi, I'd like some drugs, please. Oh, here, finish this up if you want." "Thanks, that's all do, just burn my lip." Dennis by now had drifted into the kitchen and started looking through the fridge. "You're hungry, Dennis?" "Really? Like Godzilla always is tomorrow, why don't we go eat someplace?" They walked up to Dune Creest and turned left into the honky-tonk part of town. Pipeline Pizza was jumping. The smoke so thick inside you couldn't see from one end to the bar to the other. The jukebox, audible all the way to El Porto and beyond, was playing "Sugar Sugar" by the Archies. Dennis threaded his way back to the kitchen to see about a pizza, and Doc watched Ensenada Slim working on one of the Gottlieb machines in the corner. Slim owned and operated a head shop just up the street called the Screaming Ultraviolet Brain and was a sort of village elder around here. After he'd won a dozen free games, he took a break, saw Doc, and nodded. "Buy you a beer, Slim?" "Was that Shasta's car I saw down the drive? That big old rack top?" "She stuck her head in for a couple minutes," Doc said. "Kind of weird seeing her again. Always figured when I did, it'd be on the tube, not in person. Really, sometimes I think I see her at the edge of the screen, but it's always some look-alike. And never as easy on the eyes, of course." Sad but true, as Dion always says. At Playa Vista High, Shasta made class beauty in the yearbook 4 years running. Always got to be the ingenuine school play, fantasized like everybody else about getting into the movies. And soon as she would manage it, it was up to the freeway looking for some low rent living place in Hollywood. Doc, aside from being just about the only doper she knew who didn't use heroin, which freed up a lot of time for both of them, had never figured out what else she might have seen in him. Not that they had ever been together that long. Soon enough, she was answering casting calls and getting some theater work, on stage and off. And Doc was into his own apprenticeship as a skip tracer, and each gradually locating a different karmic thermal above the megalopolis, had watched the other glide away into a different fate. Dennis came back with his pizza. I forget what I asked for and on it. This happened at the pipeline every Tuesday or cheap pizza night, when any size of pizza with anything on it, with anything on it, cost a flat 135. Dennis now sat watching on us intently like it was about to do something. That's papaya chunk, Slim guessed. And these pork rinds? And bosenberry yogurt on pizza, Dennis. Frankly, ew. It was Sortilege, who used to work in Doc's office before her boyfriend Spike came back from Vietnam and she decided to love was even more important than a day job. Or that's how Doc thought he remembered her explaining it. Her gifts were somewhere elsewhere. In any case, she was in touch with invisible forces and could diagnose and solve all manner of problems, emotional and physical, which she did mostly of for free, in some cases accepted weed or acid in lieu of cash. She had never been wrong, that Doc knew about, and at the moment she was examining his hair, and as usual he had a spasm of defensive panic. Finally, with an energetic thought, better do something about that. Again? Can't say it often enough. Change your hair. Change your life. What do you recommend? Up to you. Follow your intuition. Would you mind, Dennis, actually, if I just took a piece of tofu? That's a marshmallow, Dennis said. Back at his place again, Doc rolled a number, put on a late movie, found an old t-shirt, and sat tearing it up into short strip about half an inch wide till he had a pile of maybe 100 of these. Then he went into the shower for a while and, with his hair still wet, took a narrow length of and rolled up each one on a strip of t-shirt, trying it in place with an overhand knot, repeating this southern plantation style all over his head. And then after maybe half an hour with hair dryer, during which he may have not fallen asleep, untying the knots again, brushing it all upside down into what seemed him a fairly presentable foot and a half diameter white guy afro, inserting his head carefully into a liquor store carton to preserve the shape. Doc lay down on the couch and at this time really did fall asleep, and toward dawn he dreamed about Shasta. It wasn't that they were fucking, exactly, but it was something like that. They had both flown from their other lives the way you tend to fly in early morning dreams, to rendezvous at a strange motel which seemed to be also a hair salon. She kept insisting she loved some guy whose name she never mentioned, though when Doc finally woke up, he figured she must have been talking about Mickey Wolfman. No point sleeping anymore. He stumbled up the hill to Huevos and had breakfast with the hardcore surfers who were always there. Flaco and the bad came over. Hey man, that cop was around looking for you again? What's that on your head? Cop? When was this? Last night. He was at your place, but you were out. Detective from downtown, homicide in a really dinged up El Camino, the one with the 396? That was Bigfoot Bjornson. Why didn't he just kick my door down like he usually does? He might be thinking about it, but said something like, "Tomorrow is another day." Which would be today, right? Not if I can help it. Doc's office was located near the airport, off East Imperial. He shared the place with Dr. Buddy Tubeside, whose practice consisted largely of injecting people with vitamin B12, an euphemism for the physician's own blend of amphetamines. Today, early as it was, Doc still had to edge his past Doc still had to edge his way past the line B12 deficient customers, which already stretched back to the parking lot. Beach town housewives of a certain melancholy index, actors with casting calls to show up at, deeply tanned geezers looking ahead to the active day of schmoozing in the sun, stewardee just off some high-stressed red-eye, even a few legit cases of pernicious anemia or vegetarian pregnancy, all shuffling along half asleep, chain smoking, talking to themselves, sliding one by one into the lobby of a cinder block building through turnstiles next to which, holding a clipboard and checking them in, stood Petunia Leeway, a stunner, a starch cap, and a micro-length medical outfit. Not so much an actual nurse uniform as lascivious commentary on one, with Dr. Tubeside claimed to be thought a truckload of Frederick's Hollywood in a variety of short pastels, today being aqua at close to wholesale. "Mornin', Doc." Petunia managed to put a lounge singer lit on it, the vocal equivalent of baiting mink eyelashes at him. "Love your fro." "Howdy, Petunia. Still married to what's his name?" "Oh, Doc." On his first signing the lease, the two tenants, like bunkmates at summer camp, had tossed a coin for who'd get the upstairs suite, and Doc had lost, or, as he liked to think it, won. The sign on his door read LSD, Investigations. LSD, as he explained when people asked, which was not often standing for Location Surveillance and Detection. Beneath this was a rendering of a giant bloodshot eyeball in the psychedelic fabric's greens magenta, detailing whose literally thousands of frenzied capillaries had been subcontracted out to a commune of speed freaks who had long since migrated to Sonoma. Potential clients had been known to spend hours gazing at the ocular mazeworks, often forgetting what they'd come for. A visitor was here already, in fact, waiting for Doc. What made him unusual was he was that he was a black guy. To be sure, black folks were occasionally spotted west of the Harbor Freeway, but to see one this far out of the usual range, practically by the ocean, was pretty rare. Last time anybody could remember a black motorist in Gordita Beach, for example, anxious calls for backup went all on the police band. Small task force of cop vehicles assembled, and roadblocks were set up all along Pacific Coast Highway. An old Gordita reflex dating back to shortly after the Second World War, when a black family had actually tried to move into the town and the citizens, with helpful advice from the Ku Klux Klan, had burned the place to the ground and then, as if some ancient curse had come into effect, refused to allow another house ever to be built on the site. The lot stood empty until the town finally confiscated it and turned it into a park, where the youth Gordita Beach, by the laws of karmic adjustment, were soon gathering at night to drink, dope, and really fuck, depressing their parents through no property value particularly. "Say," Doc greeted his visitor, "what is it, my brother?" "Never mind that shit," replied the black guy, introducing himself as Tariq Khalil, and staring for a while, under different circumstances offensively, at Doc's afro. Well, come on in. In Doc's office were a pair of high backed baguettes covered in padded fuchsia plastic facing each other across a formica table in a pleasant tropical green. This was in fact a modular coffee shop booth, which Doc had scavenged from a renovation in Hawthorne. He waved Tariq into one of the seats and sat down across from him. It was cozy. The tabletop between them was littered with phone books, pencils, 3 by 5 index cards, boxed and loose, road maps, cigarette ashes, a transistor radio, roach clips, coffee cups, and Olivetta Letterta 22, in which Doc, mumbling, just started a ticket on this, inserted a sheet of paper which appeared to have been used repeatedly for some strange compulsive origami. Tariq watched skeptically. Secretary's off today? Something like that, but I'll take some notes here and I'll get typed up later. Okay, so there's this guy I was in the joint with. White guy, Aryan bro, as a matter of fact. We did some business, now we're both out. He still owes me, I mean, it's a lot of money. I can't give you details, I swore an oath I wouldn't tell. How about his name? Glenn Glenn Charlock. Sometimes the way sometimes the way somebody says a name, you get a vibration. Tariq was talking like a man whose heart had been broken. You know where he's staying now? Only only who he works for. He's a bodyguard for a builder named Wolfman. Doc had a moment of faint-heartedness. Drug-induced, no doubt. He came out of it on a paranoia alert, not enough, he hoped, for Tariq to notice. He pretended to study the ticket he was making out. If you don't mind my asking, Mr. Khalil, how did you hear about this agency? Sledge Pooteet? Wow, blast from the past. Said you helped him with a situation back in 68? First time I ever got shot at. You guys know each other from the place? They were teaching us both how to cook. Sledge still had about maybe a year or more in there. I remember when I remember him when he couldn't boil water. Should see him now. He can boil tap water. Arrowhead Springs water, club soda, Perrier, you name it. He the boiler man. So if you don't mind an obvious question, you know where Glenn Charlock works now? Why not just go over there and look in up directly? Why hire some go-between? Because this Wolfman is surrounded day and night by some Aryan Brotherhood army. And outside of Glenn, I have never enjoyed cordial relationship with those Nazi-ass motherfuckers. Oh, so send some white guy into it and get his head hammered. More or less, I would have preferred somebody a little bit more convincing. Why would I lack in altitude? Doc explained for the millionth or so time on his career. I make up for in attitude. Okay, that's possible. I seen that on the yard now and then. When you were inside, were you in a gang? Black Guerrilla Family. George Jackson's outfit, and you say you did business with who now? The Aryan Brotherhood? We found we shared many of the same opinions about the US government. Hmm, that racial harmony. I can dig it. Tariq was looking at Doc with a peculiar intensity, and his eyes had grown yellow and pointed. There's something else? Doc guessed. My old street gang, Artesia Crips. When I got out of Chino, I went looking for some of them and found it ain't just them gone, but the turf itself. Far out. What do you mean gone? Not there, grinded it up in little pieces, seagulls all picking it at it. Seagulls all picking up. Seagulls all picking at it. I figured I must be tripping. Drive around a while, come back, everything's still gone. Uh-huh, Doc typed. Not hallucinating. Nobody and nothing. Ghost town, except for this big sign. Coming soon to this site. House for peckerwood prices, shopping mall, some shit. Guess who the builder on it? Wolfman again? That's it. On the wall, Doc had a map of the region. Show me. The area Tariq pointed to looked to be fairly straight shot from eastward down Artesia Boulevard, and Doc realized after a minute and a half of map reading that it had to be on the site of Channelview Estates. He pretended to run an ethnicity scan on Tariq. You're like, what again? Japanese? Oh, how long you been doing this? Looks closer to Gardena than Compton. That's all I'm saying. WW2, said Tariq. Before the war, a lot of South Central was still Japanese neighborhood. Those people got sent to camps, we come on it and get the next Japs. And now it's your turn to get moved along? More white man's revenge. Freeway up the airport wasn't enough. Revenge for what? The riots? Some of us say insurrection. The man, he just waits for his moment. Long said history long, sad history of LA, land use, as Aunt Reed never tired of pointing out. Mexican families bounced out of the Chavez ravine to build Dodger stadiums. American Indians swept out the Bunker Hill for the music center. Tariq's neighborhood bulldozed aside for Channelview Estates. If I can get a hold of your prison buddy, will he honor his debt to you? I can't tell you what it is. No need. Oh, and the other thing is I can't give you anything up front. Groovy with that. Sledge was right. You are one crazy white motherfucker. How can you tell? I counted.